We're saying to those who say they're patriotic, but they turned a blind eye to the destruction that he's about to cause this country. You're not nearly as patriotic as we are.
So what does that mean, Bill? We've been listening all morning. We cannot. I didn't hear a word she said. I was looking at the James Brown wig. If we have a picture of James, it's the same.
It's the same one,
No,
right? And
okay.
he's not using it
I gotta
anymore.
defend
They just
her on that.
finally buried him.
You're all wrong
I
about
have to
this.
defend her on that. You can't go after a woman's looks. I think she's very attractive.
But I didn't say she wasn't attractive.
Her
I
hair's
love
pretty.
James Brown. But it's the same hair James Brown, or the godfather of soul, had.
So he had girl hair.
Whatever it is, I just couldn't get by it. You're all wrong about Maxine Waters. Number one, she's a sincere individual. Whatever she says, she believes. She's not a phony, all right?
That's right.
And that's old school, all right? If you're not a
of
phony...
old school, you got this new book coming out.
So we giving Maxine a break here. I love you, Maxine. I want to see you on The Factor. And when hell freezes over, I'm sure that'll happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And actually, it was just a week later. I don't know if you all remember. This was back in March. And a week later, April Ryan was in the press briefing room in the White House. And she was asking our president to explain himself in relationship to some conversations around Russia. And Senator Spicer told April Ryan to stop shaking her head when he was looking in the crowd. And the headline was actually Senator Spicer, Sean Spicer tells a grown woman to stop shaking her head. And so I want to just pause and love to ask you all, when you first heard about these two incidences, how did it strike you? What were you feeling at the time?
I'm Margaret Carter. I was quite disappointed, but I was not surprised. Because I think we get that all the time as women of color, that we don't have certain kind of hair. Only thing we have are wigs on our heads or hair pieces and things of that nature. But my question is, what the hell does that matter? Right. Deal with her brain. Deal with the fact that she was saying that you, Mr. O'Reilly, is unpatriotic. And he is an unpatriotic person in this sense, that if you're loyal to your country, that means you're loyal to all your people that are American citizens in this country, regardless of the color of their skin. And so when you go outside of that, you're showing yourself to be unpatriotic. And I have to tell you, black people are pretty patriotic. Oh, yeah. We are a patriotic people. We don't go against our country like many other people in the American people do. And for him to sit where he is sitting and have the kind of podium that he have to talk to the people of this country and to try to shame her about her hair, I think was a little beyond the pale.
And he taunted her too.
Yeah, he did.
And he was like going, yeah. When I first saw it, I was livid. This is why we're doing these forums. And as a person who's wore, many of those James Brown wigs a time or two, I was insulted. and I thought, what? Just like Margaret said, what does hair have to do with it? I think when I talk to women at the county and other places in the private sector, it is always a subject of conversation about black women's hair.
That's right.
And people want to touch it. They want to feel it. They want to smell it. And as an elected official, to have one of the most highest ranking member of the Congressional Black Caucus who is talking about patriotism and the lack of patriotism from some people around the country, for him to sit there and laugh at her and kind of marginalize her existence as, she's 82 years old and she's not stopping, okay? She's speaking her mind, she's standing up, and she's making sure that people know what it is. And when she heard about it, she was like, I'm not worried about Bill O'Reilly. Sit down, Felicia. And
Boy, bye.
Bye. So as an elected official, we think about those things too, because as women of color who are elected officials, we are in the spotlight all the time. It rains here in Oregon. Let's be real. it rains here.
That's right.
And so I got a lot of friends, and I use them because I can't keep my hair together, but that's not the point. It's
That's
the
right.
issues that we bring to the table. It is the conversations that we're having like today. It's the way in which we stand up for our young people and for our men in our communities. That's what it's about, being able to have voice and being able to speak truth to power. And that's what we do as women of color and as women in general. So I'm really pleased that we were able to pull this off, because when I first did the race talks, there were over 200 some odd people who were talking about it, and we were getting into it. But Tracy, you're absolutely right. This is it hit me in a way that I don't know if it hit others who were not, a woman of color, but it just. If you look at us, we all have different hairstyles. And if you've seen some of those pictures up there, we all got different hairstyles on different pictures. So what difference does it make?
But it happens to all of us. I mean, one guy took a picture came to the legislature for the first 5 years I was in the legislature and took pictures of me, and I've got to see if I can find the filming that he did on it. And they call it the many different hairdos of Margaret Carter. It's on record in this state that they showed it at the legislature. And so they're so obsessed with our hair, they can't understand our brain. As if we leave it at home or something.
That's called versatility.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I was thinking, wow, I'm glad she took that, because I would have been stunned. And so I was happy that she, as an older woman, had the presence of self and of mind to know how to take that shot, so that when it comes at me, I know not to fall for it. I know I don't have to fall into that. I can just go straight to my point. So for me, I watched stunned, and I was happy she was there, and I was thinking, that's what I'm here to do. Because some days I wonder, what's my role? But my role is to figure out what the shots are and to teach the next generation, this is how you deviate from all the things that they throw at you. So that's what I thought.
And how you pivot.
And I would also say, you know what, it wasn't the hair.
Right.
So we as women of color, we know even before these highlights in the media that we have been treated differently. And so I'm curious to hear from all of you, why did you proceed despite knowing that you would be under intense scrutiny because of the color of your skin and your gender? What was your inspiration to go ahead and take that leap, to put yourself into the public spotlight?
Well, I'll start. My husband and I are very private people, and when I told him I wanted to run, I think I asked him. He says I told him. And he maintains it to this day. He said, you don't ask nothing. I think that when you look at your mother, my mother came from South Carolina. She's a brilliant woman, but her trajectory was stunted because she came through a segregated school system. And what that meant was their books were secondhand, their buses were secondhand. Everything for them was secondhand. She was the class valedictorian, and yet she wasn't encouraged to go to college. And so when you think about all of the opportunities that were missed, that are being missed because of structural racism, structural inequities, you kind of wake up and you say there's more to this thing than what I'm feeling. And then my conversation with my mother that I talk about all the time is that she says our generation has become too comfortable. And all of the things that people in her generation fought for and those in the prior generations, all of those things were at risk. And I don't know how she knew she was so right, but this was right before the Trump election. She said, you all are going to lose everything if you don't stand up. And so my pushback to her was, Mom, I have 4 kids. I'm trying to run a business. I'm trying to be a wife. I'm trying to do what, all the things you told us if we did right, then we would have a good life. And she said, but there's more work to be done. So that's the push.
Thank you.
I think for me, running was because the community members in the community asked me. But I think the thing that inspired me forward was receiving death threats and letters. Get out of the race is the man's race, and getting all kind of mail from different people that was pretty negative and pretty scary, because I had nobody, I had no role model, and then I think I didn't ask permission of some of the men in our community, and that really kind of upset them. But I remember about 3 o'clock one morning, I could not sleep, and I was standing in the bathroom in my house. And it was like there was a voice, and the voice said, "You will stand, and you will stand because no other woman needs to receive, no other woman of color needs to receive the kind of things that you have received." Even a drunk on the street pushed me down and told me it was a man's race. And so it was all of these challenges that I had that made me want to say, not one of my daughters or no other mother's daughter who looked like me would ever have to worry, because I was moving on. And I took it, and I took it, and I cried. I lost money being in the legislature because it doesn't pay you any money. I woke up one morning, you don't. When I first went to the legislature, I was making $2,500 a month and had to leave my job to make $1,100 a month. And I don't think people know this kind of stuff. And so I was losing money. I woke up one morning with zero balance in my account. And then I had to get out and go to work again. And and I didn't think about that. But because what was bigger for me, Tracy, was being able to stand up and let our young women see that there were models that they could look to and look at and follow in that footstep. And now when I see Loretta, or I see Janelle, or I see Tana, and I see other young women who have said that I don't care how rocky this road is, I'm moving on. Because that's the thing that's going to make things come true. Because if I knew in 1985 what I knew in 1984, I was 10 years too late running for office. Because everything was done against us. And you talk about the criminal justice system, you talk about education, you talk about health services, health and human services, the racism that goes on in medical facilities where Black people don't receive the same kind of health care that other people receive. I mean, I was almost a fool. I have to tell you that. I was working so many hours because it was so much yet to be done, you guys. And we cannot sit back on our laurels and think that the work is over. It's not. Did you hear about the taxation system today? Did you hear in terms of what Maxine is talking about? Did you hear what Janelle said? She's a businesswoman, and yet when it comes down to things that have to be done toward the business community, do you think they go to her? Yeah. Now they'll go to somebody who doesn't have even the experience that she has. And so our job is still yet to be done. And we have to, as women, if there's anything I can tell you guys, women got to do a better job of supporting women. Yes. Women have got to do a better job of supporting women. And it is very, very important to understand that. Because Maxine should have had 500 letters, 500 names that came from this state that went to Fox News about what what Bill O'Reilly said about her. I mean, that doesn't make sense. And so when I say we got to be more supportive of each other, we got to write letters. You can't just have disdain for things that happen. Right. We've got to stick together as women and try to get more work done, because it is the woman who is going to move the agenda. I have to tell you that.
Well, when this came out, they created a hashtag called #BlackWomenAtWork, and it exploded. It went through, it shot through Twitter like nobody's business. It just skyrocketed. And so women were coming on talking about the different things that they've experienced in the workplace, and everybody started talking about their experiences. So it did have an impact, and it may not have come in hard copy letters, but they went on that blog and they sent it through the roof, Senator. I know that we oftentimes talk to each other about things that are happening as it relates to society, politics, kids, and those kinds of things. But for me, I watched Senator Carter, I watched Senator Gordley, I watched Representative Joanne Bowman, and I had some role models ahead of me. And so I knew that if they were able to do it, and I had worked for a U.S. Senator for 21 years, that I could do it as well, but wasn't quite sure on how to get across the finish line. So that being said, the first part is women have to be asked at least 11 times before we even consider thinking about running.
Can you believe that? All these powerful women, and we are so scared. People have to ask us 10, 11, and 12 times to run
Right.
for office, like we need permission. Hello?
Like we need permission. But I guilted myself because I was working with the Oregon Assembly for Black Affairs, and I did a youth program every other year. And I could not in good conscience go and do this youth program every other year, and tell young people, you need to run for office, you need to do that. I was doing it, I was pushing it, you need to do this, you need to do that. I said, I haven't even tried it myself, not once. I said, and so how can I sit and tell these young people to go do something that I haven't tried? And when the opportunity came up, I did try, but I don't suggest anybody do that because I got in the race 10 minutes to 5 on filing deadline in March. You need a little bit more time so you can knock on some doors. And I also jumped in a race that already had 10 people in it. So I don't advise any of you to do that at home. Please do it early. But I was given a 7% chance of winning that race, but I was so sure that I had a voice, that I thought that voice to speak up for, our seniors and to be able to protect them and to build an infrastructure for our young people was so important that I wanted to get that message out there, and that's why I ran. And I'm so thankful to have a friend like Margaret and now Janelle in the legislature. But me and her had a conversation at Valentine's Day, and we were at a party together, and we were talking about running for office, and she was picking my brain, but I didn't know all along she was thinking about running. She didn't tell me that. And the next thing I knew...
You'll never show your hand.
No.
Low key.
That's right. And then I went to a certain periodical. I won't even say what it is, but I called Janelle up and I said, wait a minute. They said you running. Is this true? Because they lie. Let me tell y'all. They lie in these papers. They give headlines and they say stuff and it's not really what it is, but I had to call to verify. Trust, but verify. And she said, oh yeah, that's true. And what y'all don't know about Miss Janelle, she is a trooper. She is amazing. She's outstanding, and her middle name tells it all. Sojourner, right?
It's on my desk at work.
Yes.
It says Janelle Sojourner Bynum, and it's intentional. Our names are so important to us, just like our crowns. My mother and father gave me the name Janelle. It's a ship name. My father's name was James, and my mother's name was Clarinell, so I got Janelle. And then Sojourner, I hated that name as a child, but it's regal. She was royalty. She was the first woman that sold selfies. That's how she financed her speaking tour. She sold pictures of herself. And then Bynum, my legal name is Irick Bynum. My father's last name is Irick. And then I had to be intentional to make sure my husband knew that he was important to me. So so I had to make sure Bynum was on there. I couldn't have 4 names on the desk, but Sojourner is in the house, and I make sure that her spirit is all throughout the air. So that's intentional.
But not only in the house, you knocked on so many doors. Tell folks, how many doors did you knock on?
Oh gosh, I think total for the campaign, I think it was about 76,000. And then for me, I feel like it was between 5 and 8. And I knew I was an underdog in my race because, nobody had really heard of me. But one thing I knew, I have South Carolina roots, and one thing people from South Carolina can do is work. And I always said, I can outwork you. I may not be smarter than you. I may not have as much money as you, but I will outwork you every day of the week. So I worked, probably 40 hours a week, knocking doors. Any door they gave me, I knocked. Even if it had my opponent's sign in it, I knocked. Because I found out that maybe somebody in that house, the husband, that was his sign, but the wife was going to vote for me. And I didn't care whether that sign was in the yard or not. Signs don't vote. So don't get all caught up about how many signs are out there, because signs don't vote. People vote. So I knocked on every door that was on my list. In the rain, the sun, the heat. It was 100 degrees. I was out knocking.
Okay, so we're transitioning into campaigns, and I do want to talk about this. Is my mic actually working? Okay, thank you. So I don't know that everybody is aware of the complexity and the difficulty of running and fundraising for a campaign as a woman of color. I want to talk about that. I would love for you all to share what that uphill walk looks like to fund these campaigns.
Well, in many ways, women of color, they have a tougher time raising money because they don't have the networks of people who have the dollars that actually fund. There's a group of folks who fund our, electoral system. And unfortunately, they're folks who don't look like us. And you have to call these folks and basically kiss the ring. And I know just from running 3 campaigns to 2 primaries and a general that men get more money than I do. That's right. And I can look on the Orastar and see how much money they give men, and then you go ask them for some money. I had a man, he gave a local elected who was up, but he didn't have an opponent, and he gave him $5,000. And so I went to him and asked for some money, and he gave me considerably less, like $2,500. And so I went back to him. I said, you gave another local candidate who's a man $5,000. And he says, oh, Loretta, don't start that. I said, well, yeah, I'm going to start that. So I said, and the reason why I'm going to start this is because that elected official who is an incumbent has no opponent. I have 3 opponents. So wouldn't you think I would need just as much money or more? And so he said, okay. And then a couple of days later, he sent me another $2,500 check. So, it's one of those things. You have to know the people who will give you money. And a lot of times, people who do have the money, if they don't know you, they're not going to give you any money. And so it's by association. And that's why it's so important if one of your friends calls you and says, okay, Janelle Bynum is running for office. She's done this for young people, families. She votes to help to create jobs. Could you give her $50 or $100? Give her $50 or $100, or even more. For some of you have dresses that cost more than $500. I mean, and you can afford to give people money. So for me, if someone asks you to come to a house party and to give some money, because we really, really need money, and we need a lot of small dollar money too, and you have to get into this whole thing where is the money? The money is with labor unions. The money is with the private sector. And then you have those individual checks that you get. But it is tough raising money. You might have a goal, a daily goal. What's your daily goal when you're in campaign mode?
It depends on the list I was calling. But initially, it was $40,000 between March and I think August. But I raised my $40,000 by mid-April.
So I go by a day because those too big. It's too big for me to look at it like that. I have to say, okay, I need to raise $500 or get $500 worth of pledges a day. And then once I get $500 or more a day, then I quit. Because if I think about how to do it so big, then it'll make you stop. It'll make you stop raising money. Or sometimes I say, this is how much money I need to raise in the month, and then I divide it by 30 and say, this is how many pledges you need to get a day, so that you stay on track. And it's not one of those things that you can just kind of, put up on the shelf and take down when you want. When you're in campaign mode, you have to raise that kind of money in order to be successful. If you're going to send out mail pieces and or get on TV. What about you, Margaret?
You guys want to hear the truth, nothing but the truth? Black people do not give money for campaigns. Now, I'm going to just tell you the truth. You might give $50 or $100. And let me tell you why it's so important. Because when labor unions, business, and all these other people give money, they're in your face to support their issues. And many of us, if it were not for who we are and who we look like, we would be so torn in terms of supporting these people that supported us, we would forget about our issues. But you know what? I have a friend. This is the God knows truth. She will go to the casino and spend and lose $1,200 and wouldn't want to give $100 for a campaign. Now, our priorities have got to be different. And I can talk to you this way because I ain't running no more.
Well, I am. And if you get a Christmas card from me, in my Christmas card this year, you will get an envelope and a newsletter because I ask everybody.
I'm begging on behalf of the people that are sitting at this table, as well as future generations, you guys, our priorities have got to be to send our people into public office and not having to scrimp and scrape for dollars in order to make sure that they support their community. Mm-hmm. We have to do that. You know, I was sitting at a table at my house about 2 weeks ago, and I had a young woman there, and she had not been in Oregon long. And I said, you know what? I am leading a committee, Women for Loretta. And I said, I need for you to come over and give me a check. And she said, how much should I give? I said, well, I do need about $250. She's in medical school and all this kind of stuff. You know, she came over there and brought me a $250 check. Mm-hmm. She came over and brought me a $250, and she is a student in veterinarian school. And I'm telling you, when you take your money, please prioritize. We got Charles running, we got Janelle running, we have Loretta running, we got Tana who's running again, and there's somebody else in our community who's running. Please, you guys, please think about setting some money aside to help people with these campaigns so that when we go to them about our issues, we don't have to stutter and mutter about why we need them to do what they do. I had a piece of legislation this last year, and it was about cigarettes. It was not my legislation, but it would allow the police to stop our kids and ask them where they get those cigarettes. Mm-hmm. Hello? Look what I wound up. On a cigarette package, like I had sold my soul for $20. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
That's the Willamette week. So I told them, excuse me, Tracy, I told them, I don't give a damn if you put my picture on a $20 cigarette bill and cigarette box at all.
I do.
But, you know.
I don't.
I do. And because
don't care what you think.
Is, you know, if the police start stopping our kids, they already got tools. Our kids are going to run. They shoot them in the back, shoot them in the front, any place else. Black and brown kids are at risk when that happens. So we have to be able to help sponsor these people so that they can stay true.
So Margaret, let me make this clear. We're not fundraising here because we're not fundraising. We're just having a conversation about fundraising. So I don't want folks to call the Secretary of State and say, "Oh, Commissioner Smith is raising money." That's not what we're doing here.
No, that's not what we're doing.
That's not what we're doing. What we're doing is we're having this conversation because in general, in general, people of color have a tough time raising money and trying to get access to those people who have resources that can make it possible. And I think that our experiences are different. You have a businesswoman, and in your race, your first race, you had to raise $1 million. Let
me talk about that one
Yeah,
quick
why don't
second.
you go ahead and talk about that?
So I had to raise a lot of money. I told you already, I raised $40,000 pretty fast. But one of the things that I learned from my now 13-year-old son, he's playing basketball. He's not a great athlete, but he's an intense athlete. And at the start of every season, he always asks me, "Mom, can you get them to send me the rule book?" And so what he does is he studies the rules. And so he tries to figure out what can he do that other people don't know about in order to be a better athlete. So that's the methodology that I apply to anything that I'm doing that's big. And so in this case, Oregon believes in transparency, and it believes that businesses can contribute. So for me, a lot of my business contacts, they wanted to see me win. So I asked them, so I'm a McDonald's owner-operator. So I called everybody in the Black McDonald's operator network. I called the women that I had supported in the Women Owners Network. And then I called my friends and family on the East Coast. And my uncle, who's a real estate agent, he got all of his clients. He sent them all letters. I sent him a form letter. Republicans, Democrats, didn't matter. They sent me money. My mother wrote a letter to her family members, 2 or 3 letters. They all sent me money. So for me, it wasn't about what was specifically happening here in Oregon. There were places around this country that needed to see some level of hope. And it wasn't so much about me. It was more about what they needed to see nationally. And Oregon really is a beacon for all the problems that we do have here. It really is a shining star in this country. You have women at the highest levels of leadership that you don't see anywhere else. And that to me was encouraging. So I'll close my thoughts on raising money by saying, if you do not ask, you will not get.
That's right.
And I always ask, not because I'm begging for money, but I want to represent the things that people believe in. So like I said, when I send out my Christmas card, you'll get an ask. I've been sending out Christmas cards for 10 years. So the first time people hear from me is not because I'm asking for money. It's because I've cultivated a relationship. And I think that money gets you to the table. Period. You have no money, you cannot get your message out. So $1 million later, that's what it took to run my first race. I don't know what it'll take to win my second race, but I know it's not 0. So
Thank you. And nobody really talks about the money part, so I'm glad we brought that up tonight. And for those of you who are a little younger, the culture of philanthropy in our community should start when you are 3 years old and you have a birthday party.
yeah.
Where are you going to give your money? Who are you going to give it to? Take some for yourself, take some to give it out to someone else, and think about your elected officials. It's so important. So I want to transition. So Senator Carter showed the picture here of the cigarette case with her picture on it. I want to talk about the M word, the media. How are women of color in particular portrayed in the media, electeds portrayed in the media? I would love for you all to share an article or an interview that sticks out that might help illustrate how we, again, can be treated unfairly in the media.
Well, I can tell you about a time we did this. Do you all remember the Selma movie a couple of years ago? We had the most outstanding media on that Selma. I took a group of kids to the Living Room Theater in downtown Portland, Southeast, because I always do a Martin Luther King event every year. I do something, and I did something at the Library Serena. Antoinette, you all were there, and Judge, and try to interface with young people to let them know that there are women, professional women of color, that they can have access to. So I thought the Selma movie was an excellent teaching tool about how we got the right to vote. And so I said, you know what? I'll just pay for all the kids to go see it. And we pulled some kids from Jefferson, from POIC, and took them to Selma. So me and Margaret and Sheriff Staten, we had lunch afterwards in the theater. And we had a conversation about what they saw, Jim Crow, how, the folks walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge the first time and got beat, and what role the sheriff played in this whole thing. And I saw the sheriff cried. He was to tears. And he said, "That's not the sheriff that I am." And the sheriff in this movie could have changed the whole trajectory of what happened on Bloody Sunday. And so we started talking to the kids about what happened in the movie. And, the Oregonian, they sat there through the whole movie, through the whole conversation in the lunch. They did an amazing piece on the Selma movie and the interaction. They did videos. They talked to Mark. They talked to all of us, and they embedded the videos. And it was probably one of the best pieces that I had gotten done since I've been in office, that I was so impressed with. And they had great pictures, and it talked about the whole history. And so this is what you get when you get women of color in office. We think about our young people who come behind us, and we're always trying to teach and educate and engage and inspire and make sure that, people who come behind us, that they know what's going on. And I felt so good about it. And then you have another hand, Miss Tracy. Then you have those folks who, malign you in the press with horrible headlines about things that you're trying to do, and they flip it on you. They lie on you. They give a different slant. And so I've had it all. I've had good headlines and I've had bad headlines. But the important thing is, when you do get headlines, is that you're getting some headlines, right? That means that you're working. And when you're doing and when you're doing good things, I remember I talked to Reverend Jackson. He came here for a conference that I was putting on in May. And then the deal was that if he came, then I would go to his event the following month and do that. So I went there. So he said, "Commissioner, what are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know, because I get beat up. I get beat up in the newspapers, headlines, bad negative headlines." He said, "Really?" He said, "So you're afraid of negative headlines, right?" I said, "Yes, I don't know if I'm going to run for anything else." I said, "I'm tired of this, So he goes, "Oh, really?" He said, "I thought you was a soldier." He said, "Weren't you the same woman who I was in your house the day after Thanksgiving? Antoinette, you were there. Weren't you the same woman who put together that inclusive fund where we tried to get tech startup money for young people and people of color in Portland, and got the mayor to chime in on it? And now we have businesses who are getting these loans, and you the same woman that got those 500 jobs for those kids, and standing up for organizations who serve culturally specific families. Aren't you that same woman that stands up for people who are being treated a certain kind of way at the local government that you work for?" He said, "Yeah, you're right, Commissioner. Don't worry about it." He said, "Why don't you just move aside for a second and let somebody who's a soldier stand in your place, who got courage." And I said, "I'm a soldier." I'm gonna run. I can do that. So, sometimes he said, "I can tell you about negative headlines. If you really want to talk about some negative headlines," he said, "I can show you some negative headlines if you really want to see some." He said, "But sometimes you have to step out on faith, and you have to continue to stand up and speak up." And I think that's a lot of what we've tried to do at District 2. We have stood up for people. We have been a voice for young people. We have also been a voice in the community to help older adults in our community, and I'm very, very proud of that. So it is a mixed bag, Miss Tracy, about the media, but again, we have to get our own media to tell our story, go back to telling our stories again, particularly with our elected officials, and we also got to push back on this media, mainstream media, and say, you need to hire more people of color, and we need to demand that. And when, yes, you can clap for that. And when the headlines get so bad and you're doing so much, we need to go to their advertisers and say, look, you crossed the line. This is when you've crossed the line. You start getting in their pocketbook, and then you will see a change. But until then, I've seen some really horrible stories about people of color, whether they're elected officials or not, in the newspaper. But I think because we are open, we're an open book, and I do believe in freedom of speech. I totally do. I've been thinking about putting together a blog myself, so when folks start going sideways, I can just write in my blog, freedom of speech. Yes. Liar, liar, liar. So, but go ahead.
I'm thinking, you guys remember about 2011, the big issue came up around PERS, the public intelligence. Did you guys see that god-awful picture of me on television and things of that nature? And let me tell you this. So, when black people receive PERS or get moved over, I'm sorry. When I've noticed that all of my white colleagues have gotten jobs in agencies, that because you lose so much money in your legislature, and if you have taken a particular subject area and have really done a good job on that, if something becomes available because you want to retire or something like that, you usually get a job. Well, all my white colleagues over the years, I went into the legislature in 1984, all my white colleagues went with me. They all got jobs in agencies. Most of them had retirements at $250,000 to $300,000 a year. I have a retirement less than $100,000 a year. Yet, I was the face of those who were taking money from the PERS system. And they sent it across the nation with my picture there. Now, never mind, the football coach at the University of Oregon bought into the system that the legislature allowed him to do, and he bought $1 million worth of time through PERS so that he would have a large deduction, a large monthly payout in the system. Now, are they going to be worried about my little $5,000? And here's somebody who's going to be receiving $30,000 to $40,000 a month?
Yes.
But it didn't matter because I was, quote unquote, the most popular, they said, among legislators on both Republican and Democratic side. So they decided that they would take my picture. It was awful. And I'm not a beauty queen, so I don't possess that. But at the same time, if you had seen that picture, you would have been so disappointed, you didn't know what to do. So that's what happened to us in the media. Either we are so black that we look like a dot on the page, or that they're going to find things that you have done in your past. Like I think in this article, they said she was a legend around civil rights, and yet she sells her soul for $20.
To tobacco, to big tobacco.
To big tobacco pack. Never mind, the guy that I was working for, he paid me $5,000 to try to get that cigarette stuff done.
Profiling.
To keep the profiling from our kids, and so that more of our kids wouldn't be killed, and more black men would not be killed because they want to walk up to you and ask you what kind of cigarettes and where did you get the cigarettes, and so that's the kind of stuff that happens to us, Tracy. We always, very seldom are we portrayed in a positive light. in the newspaper, in the media.
And they're masters of distraction.
Of course.
Whether it's our hair or our jewelry, or just expressing ourselves, articulating our thoughts.
Right.
They are masters of distraction.
Oh.
Well, I'll give my quick perspective. So I don't read about myself. I have no interest. I know who I am.
Right.
I have plenty on my plate. So my staff will keep track of whether my name comes up in anything. But when I was running, I made it a point not to watch TV. And right along the tail end of the campaign, maybe the Friday before the election, I happened to be watching TV just randomly, and the commercial, my negative commercial, came on. And I remember seeing my face being white-faced. And it was already dark, and it was like white crayon put over my face. And I was like, oh, that's cute. You know, that's cute. That's the best you got. And I know that it was effective because I went to a door that weekend and a guy said, I saw a bad commercial about you and I didn't vote for you because I saw that. And I was like, okay, that's fair. All right, -1, that's all right. But I think what's important is that we tell our own stories.
That's right.
And so it's important that we have our own media, like Loretta said, but also I'm very intentional about the story that I want to tell about myself, the legacy that I want to leave my children. And I know myself. I know my story. So what the press and the media say about me, I'm welcome to criticism. Criticize me all you want. I know how the money flows. And like you said, when people's money gets cut off, they stop doing stuff like that. So for me, I don't really care what you say about me. I know the job that I have to do. I know what's at stake for our children, for our seniors, for our business people. So that's what I'm there to do. Write all you want.
Thank you. So the hashtag Black Women at Work, I think it should be, instead of WORK, it should be WERK, Black Women at Work. Because what I love about these stories that is continuing to rise to the surface is the resiliency, the humor. I mean, these women and you all have been through so much, but yet we rise. Yes. We smile. We are fortified by the strength that we all hold together. And I know I stand on the shoulders of the women sitting here and in this community. And that's what I love about us. I just wanted to share that. I wanted to, yeah.
Thank you.
Representative Sanchez.
She has to leave. I want her to say something.
Yes, please. Representative Sanchez.
All right, hi.
Yes.
Is there something specific you wanted me to?
I just wanted you to share your experience about something that we talked about, either the media or the, just being a woman of color and what that means to you.
So interestingly enough, that the issue about the hair was a little bit different for me, right? Representative Tana Sanchez, House District 43.
Yes.
Always the braids, right? And I had that thing many times where people would come up and try to touch my hair. It's like, are you kidding me? Aside from the fact that it's a very culturally inappropriate thing to do, not to mention just, rude. Just plain rude is really the deal. But just to, to have, we are the different people, right? We are the people they've never seen before. I'm only the second Native American to ever serve in the Oregon House of Representatives. Second. We have 9 federally recognized tribes in this state, and I'm only the second Native American and not even an Oregon tribal member. Wow. Mm-hmm. So what does that say about, sort of the ability for tribal people to step forward and do some of this work too? So I understand really clearly that dynamic of what does that mean for people of color in general? How do we raise the money? That was not easy. That was not easy at all. I mean, I think I raised more money from my community, my Native community, than I did from those people with all the bucks.
Yeah.
I'm almost positive of it. You know, and it's really for me also very, again, a culturally inappropriate thing to do. We don't ask people for things.
Yes.
We don't ask for money. You know, from my culture, if you do something and you know, people want you to step forward, as you said, people asked me. Right. People asked me to step forward and help to support this campaign, my campaign, because they needed that voice. Something we have never had. Really. I mean, 1996, I think Jackie Taylor. Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, Jackie Taylor, Citizen Potawatomi. She was that one voice. And I don't know that she was able to move a whole heck of a lot, but, you know, she was there, and I'm only the second one. So we're still moving in that direction to try to just get people of color in general to be, you know, making that impact. I feel like we've had an amazing opportunity this last session, this last November 2016, with all of the folks that came into the House and moved into the Senate, and then more folks in the Senate. It's been really, really wonderful, actually. I think we've shifted some things, and I feel like obviously Margaret was the foundation of that. In the very beginning, I would really, really appreciate that so much. I knocked on her door. She went home. But, you know, and then let me just say, just briefly, the media. Well, the Willamette Week will always pick on Naya Family Center. Yeah. Always. Mm-hmm. That's just what they do. They make a conscious choice, in my opinion, to pick on organizations of color and try to find anything they can possibly pick at to say we're in a bad place, or that we've done something wrong, or there's a problem or whatever. But God forbid, you know, we actually, you know, report on something positive and supportive of anybody. So it's all good. I don't care. I really don't care what they say. I don't think there's much that they can, you know, do to me. I think my work speaks for itself and has for many, many years, and I you know, we'll just move forward. Go ahead, challenge me. That'll be the thing, huh? Me and Janelle.
I have to tell you what's helpful, though, is that even though the media writes, community people need to make them accountable. Yes. You need to write back. When they put your people in shame, they're putting you in shame.
Yes.
And I know Janelle says she doesn't care. Now Tana says that too. We need to care.
Well, it's not that I don't care.
No, not that. Hold the newspaper people accountable for what they write about.
Right.
And their advertisers.
We should hold them accountable for what they write about us. But but I can't let it damage me to the point of not doing anything. That's the real piece I want to really be able to emphasize. We can't allow it to do that.
Say one thing. I had to go for the Willamette Week endorsement interview, and I went through the whole thing. It was recorded, and at the end of the interview, I had to tell them, you know, something in your paper bothered me, and it was an article about strip clubs. And it was an article about women, the what happens in Oregon and Portland strip clubs and who's in them, and all the pictures, all the real photography of the strip clubs were about white women. But the headline picture, the graphic, was a black woman in a martini cup floating around in dollar bills, scantily clad. I said, now, you know, you didn't have one black woman interviewed in that article, but what you used to sell the article was a black woman. Mm-hmm. And I have a problem with that. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know if I would get the endorsement or not. I didn't know. But it bothered me the whole time I sat there. Right. And the interviewers told me, oh, well, that's a different department.
Of course.
Solid. Okay.
Representative Sanchez, can I tell you, thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thank you for sharing your story. So we do want to bring out some stories with the audience, but before we do that, I do want to thank Vicki Glenn, who's been helpful here in hosting. Also want to thank Judge Nelson for being here tonight. Antoinette Edwards, thank you. And Senator Fredericks, thank you for being here.
So you want to start with some questions or?
Yeah. And there will be some mics floating around Elizabeth has.
So if there are any other, hair questions, I have to say this because someone who I so admire so much, and she's always so fly all the time, and that's Antoinette Edwards. Her hair, and her outfits, they match all the time. And so when you talk about a woman of color who really, really changes herself, from a weekly basis, sometimes it's a daily basis. And I really love it. I love to see what you're gonna be wearing and what your hair is gonna be like, because I love it. And I don't have the courage to do that every single day, but I tell you what, you give me permission to do it at least on a weekly basis, so I thank you.
That's right. So one of the questions I had, because this has been in the news of late, that we can chat a little bit about is, what do y'all think about when women of color are pushed out of their jobs, and what is our role around that?
That's actually my question. I don't need a mic.
Please, can you stand up and...
Okay. That was actually my question, because there's lots of women, and actually, if my friend won't mind, we were trying to have this conversation about 2 years ago, and we tried, and we talked to the people that we thought could get it together, because so many of our friends that years of service in their jobs were all of a sudden being fired. For me, it was my hair. It was my hair with Multnomah County, and it's another issue in my past job, which I can't even talk about right now, but it was not work related, by the way. But when you have that situation of the new job fit being whether I can hang with you after work for a beer versus me mastering my skill and doing my job, and then I'm being told I'm not social, so then I'm no longer part of the clique, but my job is done well, but then you're fired. It's quite a dynamic because it's something you can't put your finger on, and it's their loophole. I'm gonna be honest about it. It's their loophole because you can't put your finger on it. But there are a lot of women I know that are very astute in their jobs and do them very well. And there are a lot of women that don't say what they feel. Obviously, I'm not one of them. So, no, I'm not. And like Janelle, I really don't care, what you think of me as long as I'm doing my job. You hired me to do a job, not to hang. I don't hang. So what I'm saying is, how do we get around that? I'm not so concerned about my daughters because they're my daughters. They know how to stay in their jobs, because I've kind of helped them navigate, around it. Rakaya did a thing yesterday that talked about that scary point of where, and I will often say, I can be me anywhere but in Portland. When I'm in Portland, I have to be someone else. I can't say, well, no, we shouldn't do that project, or no, that contractor doesn't have a license, but you gave him the job. So I can't say that. So how do we get around that?
Just yesterday, or maybe the day before, I had a conversation with the Administrative Services Division, and they basically report to the governor. And it was about a black male losing his job. And my point to them was, why is it okay with you when people assert their rights and they have to leave? Well, it's standard procedure. I said, and that's okay with you? That a person who says, I've been wronged, we need to settle this, and the offer that you put on the table includes me leaving, that is fundamentally wrong. And having those conversations with people where we talk about outcomes, they want to talk about, I followed the process, but if the process is inherently unfair to begin with, you are always going to get the same outcome. And the point to drive home about this is, if you were not a land-owning male in this country, it was not set up for you.
That's right.
Period. And so everything from the start of this country, from when this country, not people who were already here, but when this country was founded, is based on the man that owns land. So all of the women that we have in place in leadership, all of the minorities that we have in leadership, it is their job to dismantle that original founding basic principle of only allowing prosperity to go to people who own land. So I think in having that conversation with them, they started to understand structural racism. And I think the conversations should not be about woe is me, because nobody cares about how badly we've been treated. But when you talk about how much wealth has been stolen from people of color, from women, from immigrants, that's, I think, when we start to get to the core of dismantling structural racism, xenophobia, sexism, all of those things that tear at the fabric of our country and don't deliver on the promise of basically what people call a more perfect union. So that's my take on your answer, on your question.
One of the things that I experienced out of my 27 years of being in the Oregon legislature is that I don't care whether it was Bill McCoy, Jim Hill, Margaret Carter, Lou Frederick, Avell Bordley, every last one of us have worked on public contracting. I have to tell you that. And it's an insular situation because you have the unions on this side, and then you have government leaders on this side, and you have individual legislators who are working to uphold their people and their right to how contracting is done. And then the city of Portland, and God knows the county has been worse than anybody. I mean, to me, that is one of the most racist places that any of our people could ever work, is with Multnomah County. And I don't care. Who knows, like I told you, I'm not running anymore. I don't care. And if they want to come after me, I will say this, whether it's on national TV or not. Okay? That Multnomah County is one of the most racist places because of my 27 years. I have worked with employees from the county who have always had a bad time at the county. And I should tell you that even when we tried to do work with contracting at the city of Portland, we always run into trouble. And I wish, God knows you don't know how I've cried and prayed and everything else about what happens to our people in city and county government in Portland. But that's a hard one. I wish I knew, I really do wish I knew what we could do any differently to bring to the forefront the levels of racism in county and city government for our people.
Thank you. Thank you. We need to take another question.
Hi, I'm Deborah Lindsay, and I just want to say, not so much of a question, but kind of just a follow-up in the conversation that's going. I think that one of the things that needs to happen is that we do need a Black agenda, and we've had Black leadership forums like PALF and some others, but I don't really see where we really have established goals and issues that affect our community that can be communicated to our Black leaders. And it's the same thing with President Obama when he was in office. We have to bring the issues to the table for them to fight for. And I think, for example, this issue with unfair termination, no fault termination, that's the issue in Oregon, is that there is a law that says there's no fault. And that disproportionately affects people of color, but I think we do have allies in our white women that experience that. So those are the places that I think that we need to attack and that we need to support and that as people of color in office and in power need to address. And I just want to close with saying Senator Carter I work for Multnomah County, and I have to say that I think there are very deliberate efforts being made to enhance contracting with minority and particularly African American. Well, let me say it this way.
WESB.
Yeah, let me say it this way. I thought about that. Yes, women, minority women, emerging small business and service disabled veteran businesses. Lee Flemings is the supplier diversity officer. I work directly under him. And I do know that on the contracts that the county, the commissioners have set goals. There's county values that are in place. And I do know that we work on a daily basis holding our projects and contractors accountable to those. I mean, we call them on the goals. We don't take just any flippant answer for not meeting the goals. We assess damages when they don't. We require those primes to, if they're not meeting the goals, we require those primes to look for minority workers, and we don't just take, oh, we made a call, or oh, we called the hall. There are mechanisms in place that require specific outreach efforts that will either mitigate or not their efforts. So I think there's deliberate efforts being made, and I just want to say that as a piece of encouragement.
Yeah. Thank you.
And Ms. Deborah, I want to follow that up because I was gonna talk about that as well. I've been at the county for 7.5 years, and I'm on the commission, and I know there had been a history. You have a longer history with the city of Portland and Multnomah County, and I know one of my goals when I got there was to make sure, and Deborah can tell you this, I ask the question all the time. I'm asking the hard question. I'm not just asking the question about the contractors. I'm talking about workforce too, because see, people get caught up in who the general is, who the sub is, but I also want to understand, what does the workforce look like? And I ask those questions all the time. Now, do we have a lot of room for improvement? Yes, we do, Senator. And I hear you loud and clear, and I hear your frustration, particularly of years and years of this. But I know since I have been there the last 7.5 years, we have done so much work to improve upon those contracting dollars, because we've just been fortunate to have these infrastructure projects at Multnomah County, from bridges to the courthouse to the health department and other ways. And I'm telling you, just like my Black elected leaders before me, we all have, and we understand that this has been a big, huge issue, and it is not lost on me that has been a problem. I've worked really hard to try to improve upon that, and we got a lot of work to do. I'm not saying that it's not challenging, or that there's not some sort of entrenched racism and structural and institutional racism in Multnomah County. There are. I mean, we as leaders at the county, we have acknowledged that, and our job right now is to figure out how to lessen that, how to make sure that we get out of that silo of doing business in the same way.
Can I say something to you,
Yes.
Deborah? Let me just say this one thing. It's not that people of color are not working hard on these issues, but systemic racism is alive and well in Oregon and in many other places across this country. Yes. And so my continuous criticism is based upon the system, not the few individuals that we have elected, and Deborah working from a perspective of being in the marketplace. This is not a criticism against us, but you guys, you're gonna hear me until I die. My voice is silenced. That unless we can deal with the whole system of racism in government. That's what I'm doing. Not that you guys are not working hard and trying to hold people accountable, but when I continue to see so many young men, black men, brown men walking the streets of Oregon, no jobs and that kind of stuff, my voice is going to continue to raise until we can recognize that you wouldn't have to put so many people in jail if you create opportunity in the marketplace.
So on
on that note, excuse me, we're going to wind it down, but I wanted to ask our panelists if you had any final remarks that you would like to make before we close.
Do we have time for just one more question? It looks like somebody wanted it. Did you have a question? Any question? Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Allison Sosa. I do a lot of campaign field directing work, and Miss Janelle Bynum gave me the opportunity to help her on her campaign. And the thing that inspired me most when I first met you, Janelle, was the fact that you were a mother. And Miss Carter as well, like you say that you see men of color on, getting incarcerated. I grew up in Southeast in the Flats, 82nd Johnson Creek. I was one of the lightest people in my neighborhood. And so being in an environment like that, I knew that it was my responsibility to be the breadwinner in my family. I knew my brother was always in juvenile detention, and I knew that my education was the route to my success. As a single mother now, of almost 3, I look at it as how do we juggle that? I have a son, you know what I mean? How do I continue to encourage him? And it's through his classmates, reminding them, look, you're in an environment where people see you and you're just playing on the playground. You're just goofing off fighting. But the environment around you doesn't see that. They just see hoodlums, And I had to sit those boys down, actually, and say, look, you have a mother somewhere, and she brought you into this world, and she wants to see you successful, and you do that through your education. So being that strong example, Miss Smith, you were a single mother. Like, Janelle, you have 4. Miss Carter, like, you were all so empowering to me. Like, I've been almost in tears because I'm just saying, like, yes, this is what we need. Women need to lead from the front because we're the ones that bring life into this world. Yes. And I don't just see that my children are brown. I see that I have 2 children of color who have the cards stacked against them. And every chance I get, I'm on a campaign that I care about because I need to see those people in power. I need to see that hope for myself because as a single mother, there's about this much hope sometimes. Yeah. And especially here in Multnomah County, there's this many resources for us. I can't tell you how many times I've been denied SNAP, but yet I can barely make my rent. And I've been pushed out of jobs because I'm a mother, because my son has an ear infection or my daughter has bronchitis. That's how you get pushed out. And for me, having the hope of getting the right people in those seats, getting those people into positions of power, that's what gives me the fight that I can do this. Maybe I might not get a college education because I can't afford childcare, but these 2 are. He's been sitting here doing his homework the whole time. Get your nose in the books. In the books. Just thank you. And the fact that you can juggle a family and have an education, those are 2 of the greatest strengths that we as women of color have. And leading from the front. Not being afraid to stand up and run for office, even though our reputation, our looks, our income, our education, our personal lives are thrown out there in the world. I don't care. Yeah. You can say what you want, because these 2 are the only ones that matter to me right now.
Thank you.
Yay!
That was powerful. I didn't plan on crying.
Allison is one of those examples of people that you meet along the way and you find out, even if you entered a race for your own ego, you find out it's not about you. Mm-hmm. It's about all the Allisons in the world. Mm-hmm. And I would say, a lot of times as Black people, we think we have to give a lot of money, and you do have to give money. But what's important is that you also walk and you knock. And even taking your children. So I brought 2 of my kids here with me. I thought that being a mother would be one of those things that held me back because I had so many responsibilities. I want to make sure that they have a birthday party. I want to make sure that they have new clothes for school, that they have eye appointments, teeth appointments, annual child visits. I wanted to make sure they had all of that, and that was hard, trying to be a legislator, campaign, and get through that. But it is also when I get on the floor, it is what gives me my testimony. It is the strength that I get being a mother, and it is also one of those things that we don't have a lot of in politics. Is people who are mothers, who understand the juggle, who understand the fight. And so I would say thank you, Allison. Thank you for your question about motherhood. And all of the mothers who think that they don't have enough time, we all know that if something came up, we would make time for it. So, yes.
Can I just introduce somebody?
Yes.
We have a young woman who is has just finished veterinarian school, and so I want to introduce Dr. Jasmine Streeter so that you guys know that we have a young black woman. Stand up, Jasmine.
We are very proud of you, Miss Jasmine. Thank you for all your hard work. The other issue is just to leave everyone with, while it's only the two of us, I'm the second African American in the history of Multnomah County to be on the Multnomah County Commission, and I stand on the shoulders of Gladys McCoy, and she was a commissioner. She was actually a chair almost 30 years ago, and so I think it is my responsibility to make sure that we get someone in county government a little bit sooner than 30 years that look like me. But the issue is, it is not the only responsibility of elected officials of color to make sure that other staff people are hired. We need our white elected officials to hire our people of color. And I know how important that is because I worked for Senator Wyden for 21 years out of college, and I'm so grateful and thankful he took a chance on me. I was referred to him by the Urban League, and I said, you know, I'm trying to look for a management trainee program, and they said, no, there are none. It was an S&L crisis. He said, but we do have a job over at Congressman Wyden's office, people like him, and it's a front desk job. And I said, no, my mom's not gonna be happy about that. I could have got that job without going to college. He said, well, he requires his receptionist to have a 4-year degree. She said, do you have a job? I said, no. She said, you better get over there and answer those phones. And I did. I went over there and answered the phones, and that was the best management trainee program that I could have gotten because he took a chance on a kid from Michigan who I didn't know folks around and put the time and the effort so that I could see a bird's eye view of what it means to be an elected official, what it means to be a grassroots organizer, and what the issues are. So I got a chance to meet all the people. I remember that's where I first met you at, Miss Antoinette, when you were up there at the Nike Center working up there. So I met a lot of people. So I just want to say each one of us needs to take one and bring somebody along, and we'll be able to build a bench. And Lou Frederick, thank you for your service too. I know this was about women of color, but you've been fighting the fight for a long time, sir. So I want to thank you for all the work that you do.
Supporter of women.
Yes, a huge ally. And he knows we do call each other and say, oh my God, or this is happening, this is great, I want you to experience this with me. So we accept each other's successes and our challenges, and so it's great to have you around.
Amen.
Yes. We have one, go ahead.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up. We do have one more thing to close on, but I wanted to make a reference to the Black Agenda. So I grew up in Northeast Portland, and maybe I'm hanging out the wrong places, but I have not been in a room like this for a long time. And I want to thank the commissioner for convening us, because I do believe that building that agenda comes from building relationships and being together like this. And so I just wanted to say thank you for putting this together.
Yes, I want to thank all of you for being here because you all make me stronger. This has been one of the greatest honors of my life, aside from my son, to be able to serve in the capacity as an elected official. No one in my family has ever been an elected official, or no one in my family has ever worked for an elected official. I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college. So, thank you.
Strong Black woman, and I cannot be intimidated.
Start from the beginning.
Let me just say this. I'm a strong Black woman, and I cannot be intimidated. I cannot be undermined. I cannot be thought to be a friend of Bill O'Reilly or anybody. And I'd like to say to women out there everywhere, don't allow these right-wing talking heads, these dishonorable people to intimidate you or scare you. Be who you are, do what you do, and let us get on with discussing the real issues of this country.
Thank you, Senator Carter. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Tracy, for being an excellent, excellent moderator. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.